High Commander Vexithara stood before the massive view screen in his command center, watching the data stream from the outer territories. His forearms moved across the control panels with practiced ease, his scaled skin gleaming under the artificial lights of the Dominion flagship. For 300 years he had served the Zephyrian Empire, crushing rebellions and conquering new worlds. Today brought news of another primitive species stumbling into their space. The intelligence officer, a younger Zephyrian with bright green markings, approached with a data pad. "Commander, we have completed our analysis of the new species. They call themselves humans." Vexithara took the pad and studied the information. The creatures were small, barely reaching his shoulder height. They had only 2 arms, soft pink skin, and tiny teeth. Their lifespan was pathetically short at only 80 years. Most amusing of all, they had no natural weapons. No claws, no venom, no thick armor plating. "Fascinating," Vexithara said, his voice carrying the deep rumble typical of his species. "What about their technology?" "Primitive, sir. They still use chemical rockets for space travel. Their weapons are basic projectile launchers and explosive devices. Nothing that could threaten even our oldest ships." The officer pointed to various charts and graphs. "They only achieved interstellar flight 50 years ago. Most of their energy still comes from burning fossil fuels." Vexithara nodded, satisfied. The Dominion had faced thousands of species over the millennia. None had ever posed a real challenge once the Empire decided to act. These humans would be no different. "What about their society?" he asked, scrolling through more data. "Chaotic, sir. They fight constantly among themselves. Our xenobiologists count over 14,000 wars in their recorded history. They can't even agree on simple things like government systems or economic models. Half their planet follows one set of beliefs while the other half follows completely different ones." The commander's mandibles clicked in amusement. A species that couldn't stop fighting itself would never stand against the organized might of the Dominion. "Military capabilities?" "Limited, sir. They have small armies scattered across their worlds. No unified command structure. Their largest military force has only a few million soldiers. Compare that to our billion-strong legions, and they're barely worth counting." Vexithara set down the datapad and walked to the massive star map dominating one wall of the command center. The Zephyrian Dominion controlled 400 star systems, marked in bright red across the galaxy. Dozens of conquered species served the Empire, their worlds providing resources and labor. The humans occupied a tiny yellow dot near the galaxy's edge. "The Sol system." "Sir?" the intelligence officer continued. "There's something else. The humans have requested a meeting. They want to discuss what they call peaceful contact and trade agreements." "Trade?" Vexithara's 4 eyes widened in surprise. Most species either submitted immediately when they encountered the Dominion, or they tried to run. Few were foolish enough to think they could negotiate as equals. "Yes, sir. They've sent a diplomatic vessel to the border system of Kepler 442. They're waiting for our response." The commander considered this. Perhaps these humans were smarter than their profile suggested. Maybe they understood their position and were ready to surrender without forcing the Dominion to waste resources on a war. It would save time and ships. "Prepare my personal transport," Vexithara ordered. "I will meet with these humans myself. If they're wise enough to surrender peacefully, we can add their system to the Empire without firing a shot." 3 days later, Vexithara's ship arrived at the meeting point. The human vessel was tiny compared to his massive dreadnought. It looked fragile, like it might fall apart if he stared at it too hard. How had such weak creatures ever managed to reach the stars? The human delegation consisted of 3 individuals, 2 males and 1 female according to the files. They wore simple blue uniforms and carried no visible weapons. The leader, Ambassador Sarah Chen, was a small woman with graying hair and calm eyes. She looked completely unimpressed by the massive alien warrior facing her. "High Commander Vexithara," she said, bowing slightly. "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. We represent the United Earth government and all human colonies." "You are welcome," Vexithara replied, studying the humans carefully. They seemed even smaller in person. "I trust you understand why I have come." "We believe you wish to discuss the relationship between our species," Ambassador Chen said. "We're hoping to establish peaceful contact and mutually beneficial trade." Vexithara's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. "There will be no trade between equals, human. You have entered Zephyrian space without permission. Your species has 2 choices. Submit to the authority of the Dominion, or be destroyed." The 3 humans exchanged glances. but their expressions didn't change. Ambassador Chen folded her hands calmly. I'm afraid we can't accept those terms, Commander. Humanity values its independence. We're willing to discuss borders, trade routes, and peaceful coexistence, but we won't submit to foreign rule. Foreign rule? Vexithara stood to his full height, towering over the humans. You dare speak to me of independence? Your entire species could fit in a single Dominion city. You have no weapons that could scratch our ships, no armies that could stand against our legions. What makes you think you have a choice in this matter? Because it's the right thing to do, the ambassador replied simply. We didn't come here looking for a fight, Commander. But we also won't bow down just because you're bigger than us. The commander studied the human woman. There was no fear in her eyes, no trembling in her voice. Either she was incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Given what he knew about human intelligence, he suspected the latter. You have 1 week to reconsider, Vexithara announced. Gather your leaders and explain the situation to them. The Zephyrian Dominion offers one final chance for peaceful surrender. If you refuse, we will take your worlds by force. We appreciate the warning, Ambassador Chen said, but our answer won't change. Humanity doesn't surrender. As the human delegation prepared to leave, Vexithara felt a strange mix of annoyance and anticipation. Most species begged for mercy at this point. These humans acted like they actually believed they could fight the Dominion and win. It was almost amusing. Commander, his intelligence officer whispered as the humans departed. Should we begin mobilizing the war fleet? Yes, Vexithara replied, watching the small human ship disappear into hyperspace. But only a light force. 300 ships should be more than enough to handle this quickly. We don't want to waste resources on such a minor threat. The officer nodded and began issuing orders. Within hours, Dominion ships across the sector started moving toward human space. It would take them 2 weeks to reach the outer human colonies, more than enough time for the humans to reconsider their foolish decision. But Vexithara suspected they wouldn't. These strange little creatures seemed determined to fight, despite having no chance of victory. He almost felt sorry for them. Almost. The galaxy was about to witness another swift Dominion conquest. The humans would learn, as so many species before them had learned, that resistance to the Empire was futile. Some lessons could only be taught through overwhelming force. Vexithara returned to his command chair and began planning the invasion. By the time the Dominion fleet reached human space, this would all be over. Another species would join the Empire, and the galaxy would be reminded once again of Zephyrian power. He had no idea that he had just made the greatest mistake in galactic history. The Zephyrian war fleet moved through space like a dark storm. 300 massive ships, each one capable of destroying a city, traveled toward human space with confidence. Admiral Kextar, commanding the invasion force, had fought in dozens of campaigns. Never had he needed more than a few days to crush any resistance. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, we're approaching the first human settlement. It's a mining station on an asteroid in the Alpha Centauri system. Population? 3,000 humans. Kextar studied the scan results. The mining station looked even more pathetic than he had expected. A few small buildings connected by metal tubes, surrounded by basic defensive barriers that wouldn't stop a child's toy weapon. No military ships in sight. Standard procedure, he ordered. Demand their surrender. When they comply, we'll take the station intact and move to the next target. The communication channel opened and a human face appeared on the screen. It was a middle-aged man with dirt on his face and tired eyes. This is Station Chief Morrison. Can I help you? This is Admiral Kextar of the Zephyrian Dominion, the Admiral announced, his forearms spread wide to show his authority. You are now under our control. Surrender immediately and you will not be harmed. Morrison looked confused. Surrender? I'm sorry, but I don't understand. This is a civilian mining operation. We're not part of any military. That is no longer relevant, Kextar replied. Your species refused our terms. You have 30 seconds to surrender or we will destroy your station. The human was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that surprised the Admiral. Well, I guess we better get to work then. The communication cut out. Kextar stared at the empty screen, confused. Get to work? What did that mean? Sir, his sensor operator called out, the humans are moving. But they're not evacuating. They're heading toward us. On the tactical display, Kextar watched in amazement as the tiny human mining ships began leaving the asteroid. These weren't warships. They were industrial vehicles designed for moving rocks and ore. Yet they were flying directly toward his massive fleet. "What are they doing?" Kexter muttered. His question was answered when the first mining ship loaded with explosives slammed into one of his destroyers. The explosion tore through the ship's hull, killing dozens of Zephyrian soldiers. Before he could react, 2 more mining vehicles crashed into his fleet, their human pilots making no attempt to escape. "Return fire," Kextar shouted. "Destroy them all." The Dominion ships opened up with their massive weapons. The human mining craft stood no chance against military-grade firepower. One by one, they were blown apart, their crews dying in space. But they kept coming, and each one took Zephyrian soldiers with them. Within an hour, the mining station was destroyed. But so were 6 Dominion ships with hundreds of dead Zephyrian warriors. For a civilian target that should have surrendered immediately, the cost was shocking. Admiral, his communication officer, said, "We're receiving broadcasts from the human settlement. They transmitted detailed information about our ships, weapons, and tactics before they died." Kextar felt a chill run through his scales. "Who were they transmitting to?" "Every human settlement in the sector, sir. And beyond." The Admiral stared at the tactical display. The humans had died fighting, but not uselessly. They had been gathering intelligence, learning about Dominion capabilities, and sharing that knowledge with their people. It was like they had planned this. "Move to the next target," he ordered, trying to push down his growing unease. The pattern repeated at every human settlement. Mining colonies, research stations, small cities, none of them surrendered. Instead, they fought with whatever they had available. Scientists turned laboratory equipment into weapons. Farmers used agricultural machinery to attack Dominion troops. Even children helped by carrying ammunition and medical supplies. But what truly disturbed Kextar was how the humans fought. They didn't panic or run around screaming like most species did when facing overwhelming force. Instead, they were calm, organized, and methodical. They followed orders from their leaders, worked together perfectly, and never stopped gathering information about their enemies. At a research station on Europa, the humans did something that shocked the entire Dominion fleet. When it became clear they couldn't win, the station's commander, Dr. Amanda Torres, made an announcement that was broadcast on all frequencies. "This is Dr. Torres to all human forces. We're transmitting complete tactical data on Zephyrian shield frequencies, weapon patterns, and ship movements. We've identified weaknesses in their armor plating and gaps in their defensive formations. Use this information. Make them pay for every inch." Then she detonated the station's fusion reactor. The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away. It destroyed 12 Dominion ships and damaged dozens more. But more importantly, it sent a message that traveled across human space faster than any ship could fly. Humanity was not going to surrender. On Earth, in the command center of the United Earth Government, Admiral James Morrison, Station Chief Morrison's younger brother, watched the reports coming in from the outer colonies. Each defeat was also a lesson. Each human death brought valuable intelligence about their enemies. "Sir," his aide said quietly, "the outer settlements are gone. But we have complete tactical profiles on the Zephyrian fleet now. We know how they fight, how their ships work, and where they're vulnerable." Admiral Morrison nodded grimly. Then Tom and the others didn't die for nothing. "Begin Phase 2 of the defense plan, and send a message to all colonies. Remember Europa." Back in space, Admiral Kextar was beginning to understand that he had made a terrible mistake. His easy conquest had cost him 30 ships and thousands of soldiers. The humans were supposed to be weak, cowardly creatures who would beg for mercy. Instead, they fought like demons, dying to take Zephyrians with them. But what worried him most were the intercepted human communications. They weren't crying or pleading for help. Instead, they spoke in calm, professional voices about acceptable losses, tactical priorities, and intelligence-gathering opportunities. They talked about their own deaths, like they were planning a business meeting. "Admiral," his intelligence officer reported, "we've been monitoring human military communications. They're mobilizing their entire species for war. Every human world is converting to military production. They're treating this as what they call total war." "Total war?" Kextar had never heard the term before. "Yes, sir. It appears to be a human concept where an entire civilization commits all its resources to fighting. Every factory, every citizen, every resource, everything becomes part of the war effort." The Admiral felt something he hadn't experienced in decades: doubt. The Dominion had conquered hundreds of species, but none had ever responded like this. Most civilizations tried to negotiate after losing a few battles. Others simply collapsed when faced with overwhelming force. But these humans seemed to grow more determined with each defeat. They were learning from every encounter, adapting their tactics and sharing information across their entire species. It was like fighting an enemy that got stronger every time you hit it. "Sir," his tactical officer called out, "we're approaching the Proxima Centauri system. Long-range sensors detect human military vessels." Kextar looked at the display. Finally, he would face the human military directly instead of armed civilians. Perhaps now he could end this quickly and restore the natural order of things. But as his fleet moved closer to Proxima Centauri, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. The humans weren't running away or begging for mercy. They were waiting for him, and somehow that was more terrifying than any weapon. Captain Sarah Chen gripped the command chair of the UES Indomitable as the Zephyrian fleet appeared on her sensors. 270 enemy ships against her small flotilla of 30 human vessels. In any normal military calculation, this would be called suicide, but humans had stopped thinking in normal terms the moment the first colonies burned. "Captain," her tactical officer, Lieutenant Kim, reported, "enemy fleet is moving into attack formation. They're using Pattern 7 approach, same formation they used at Europa." Sarah nodded. The Zephyrians were creatures of habit, following the same tactical doctrines that had served them for centuries. That predictability was about to become their weakness. "All ships, this is Indomitable," she broadcast to her fleet. "Execute Protocol Leonidas. Remember what we learned from our people who died to give us this chance." The human ships spread out in what looked like a defensive formation. To Zephyrian eyes, it probably appeared that the humans were preparing to fight a traditional space battle. They had no idea they were flying into a carefully planned trap. Admiral Kextar watched the human formation with satisfaction. Finally, these creatures were acting like a proper military force instead of suicidal civilians. Perhaps now he could crush them quickly and move on to the main human worlds. "Sir," his weapons officer said, "the human ships are holding position. They're not running." "Good. Begin the attack. Target their command ship first." The Zephyrian fleet opened fire, their massive energy weapons lighting up space. But something strange happened. The human ships didn't try to dodge. Instead, they absorbed the hits while continuing to close distance. "Their shields are failing," the weapons officer reported. "But they're still advancing." Sarah felt her ship shake as another energy blast struck their hull. Sparks flew from damaged control panels and she could smell smoke in the air. The Indomitable was dying around her, but she held course. "Captain," Kim called out, "we're at optimal range. All ships, execute now." What happened next changed space warfare forever. The human ships didn't fire their weapons. Instead, they did something the Zephyrians had never seen before. They used their ships as guided missiles. But not the crude ramming attacks from the mining colonies. This was precise, calculated, and devastating. Captain Chen had studied every piece of data from the destroyed colonies. She knew exactly where the Zephyrian ships were vulnerable. The Indomitable, its hull failing and engines overloading, slammed into the command ship of the enemy fleet at exactly the right angle to penetrate their shield generators. But Chen wasn't finished. As Zephyrian boarding troops flooded into her dying ship, they found corridors lined with explosives and human crew members who had volunteered to stay behind. The soldiers who had conquered dozens of species suddenly found themselves trapped in a metal coffin, with humans who refused to die quietly. Lieutenant Martinez, wounded and bleeding, activated the charges that turned the Indomitable into a giant fragmentation bomb inside the enemy ship. His last words, broadcast to the entire human fleet, were, "Data package transmitted. Good hunting." Across the battle zone, 29 other human ships were making similar sacrifices. Each captain had studied the intelligence reports, identified specific enemy vulnerabilities, and turned their vessel into a precision weapon designed to exploit those weaknesses. The Zephyrian fleet, which had begun the battle with overwhelming superiority, suddenly found itself crippled. 30 human ships had destroyed or disabled over 100 enemy vessels. The exchange rate was still in the aliens' favor, but barely. Admiral Kextar, his command ship heavily damaged and his fleet scattered, stared at the tactical display in shock. In 300 years of military service, He had never seen anything like what the humans had just done. "Sir," his communications officer said with a shaking voice, "we're receiving transmissions from the human ships." Even as they were dying, they were broadcasting detailed scans of our fleet movements, weapon capabilities, and tactical responses. The Admiral watched as the surviving human ships, badly outnumbered but still fighting, began implementing new tactics based on the intelligence gathered from their dying comrades. They moved in patterns he had never seen before, exploiting weaknesses in Zephyrian formations that his species had never realized existed. But what truly terrified him was the human communications chatter. As their ships burned and their people died, they spoke in calm, professional voices. Indomitable sacrifice confirmed shield harmonics frequency. All ships adjust targeting accordingly. Boarding action on Vessel 7 successful. Zephyrian troops vulnerable to close combat in narrow spaces. Command ship bridge location verified. Transmitting structural analysis for future reference. They were treating their own deaths as learning experiences. The battle lasted 6 more hours. When it was over, the human fleet was completely destroyed. But so was 60% of Kextar's invasion force. For a species that was supposed to be weak and primitive, the humans had fought like nothing he had ever encountered. But the worst part was yet to come. As Kextar prepared to limp back to Dominion space for reinforcements, his intelligence officer brought him a report that made his blood run cold. "Sir, we've been monitoring human communications across their entire territory. The battle data from Proxima Centauri has been transmitted to every human world, every ship, every military installation. They're analyzing our tactics, our capabilities, our weaknesses." The Admiral looked at the communication logs. Detailed technical specifications of Zephyrian ships, complete tactical analyses and strategic recommendations were being shared across human space faster than his ships could travel. Every engagement was being turned into a training manual for the entire human species. "There's something else, sir," the officer continued. "Our xenobiologists have been studying human history, trying to understand their behavior. What we found is disturbing." "Explain." "Humans have been fighting wars for their entire evolutionary history. They have detailed records of over 14,000 conflicts, from tribal battles to planetary wars. They've analyzed every tactical concept, every strategic principle, every form of warfare their species has ever encountered." Kextar felt a chill run through his scales. "Continue." "Sir, they have entire universities dedicated to studying war. They teach courses on military strategy, battlefield tactics, and something they call military history. They've been preparing for space warfare since before they could even travel between stars." The Admiral stared at the data in front of him. While the Zephyrian Dominion had been conquering primitive species for centuries, humanity had been studying war itself. They had turned conflict into a science, strategy into an art form, and battlefield adaptation into an evolutionary advantage. "Sir, there's one more thing. We intercepted a message from the human military command. They're calling what we just witnessed first contact protocols. This wasn't their real military responding to our attack." "What do you mean?" "Sir, everything we've faced so far, the mining colonies, the research stations, even the fleet at Proxima Centauri, those were just their screening forces. According to the transmissions, their main military hasn't even been deployed yet." Admiral Kextar looked out at the stars, where his once mighty fleet limped toward home. He had been so confident when this campaign began. The humans were weak, primitive, disorganized. They should have surrendered immediately. Instead, he had discovered something that would haunt his dreams. Humanity's greatest weakness was also their greatest strength. They fought among themselves constantly, which meant they had turned warfare into an evolutionary advantage. Every human was born into a species that had been perfecting the art of war for millions of years. And now, for the first time in their history, they were united against a common enemy. The galaxy was about to learn why humans were the only species that made war into entertainment, turned battlefield tactics into sports, and created games based on military strategy. The real war was just beginning. High Commander Vex Ithera stood in his war room, staring at reports that made no sense. 6 months had passed since he had ordered the invasion of human space. By now the conquest should have been complete. Instead, he was reading about the collapse of entire Zephyrian battle groups. "Explain this to me again," he demanded, pointing at the tactical display. "How did the humans destroy 3 dreadnoughts with cargo ships?" General Zixara, his chief military advisor, shifted uncomfortably. Sir, the humans have developed what they call asymmetric warfare. They don't fight battles the way we expect them to. The display showed the Battle of Wolf 359, where a human freight convoy had turned into a deadly trap. What appeared to be defenseless cargo vessels had lured a Zephyrian patrol into an asteroid field, then revealed hidden weapons and reinforcements. The supposedly unarmed freighters were actually disguised warships. They're not following any recognized military doctrine, Zixara continued. Our tactical computers can't predict their movements because they don't behave logically. Vexithara studied the battle footage. Human ships moved in patterns that seemed random, but somehow always positioned them for maximum advantage. They sacrificed expensive vessels to destroy cheap ones, ignored strategic targets to hit seemingly unimportant ones, and treated every engagement as if the rules of warfare didn't apply to them. Sir, his intelligence chief interrupted, we have a bigger problem. The humans are inside our supply lines. Impossible. Our rear areas are completely secure. With respect, sir, no, they're not. The intelligence chief activated a new display showing Zephyrian territory. Red markers indicated recent attacks on supply depots, communication relays, and transport ships. The humans are using captured Zephyrian vessels to move through our space undetected. They're hitting targets hundreds of light years behind our front lines. Vexithara felt his confidence cracking. The Dominion had never faced an enemy that operated like this. How are they getting past our security? They're not trying to get past it, sir. They're going through it. Human infiltration teams allow themselves to be captured, then break out once they're inside our facilities. They seem to prefer being prisoners to fighting their way in. The commander reviewed the incident reports. Human soldiers would surrender to Zephyrian forces, be transported to secure facilities, then somehow escape and cause massive damage from within. Security recordings showed them moving through Dominion installations like they had studied the blueprints for years. Sir, General Zixara said quietly, there's something else. Our troops are reporting psychological effects from fighting humans. What kind of effects? Fear, sir. Panic. Some of our soldiers are refusing combat orders when they hear they're facing human forces. Vexithara's 4 eyes widened. Zephyrian warriors were bred for battle, trained from birth to show no fear. The idea that they might refuse to fight was unthinkable. Explain. Zixara activated a recording from a recent battle. This is from Sergeant Coultar's unit during the engagement at Kepler 438. Listen to what the humans are broadcasting. The recording played audio from a human communications channel. Instead of military chatter, Vexithara heard something chilling. Humans talking about Zephyrian soldiers like they were studying laboratory specimens. Target group moving into Sector 7. Note their formation. Classic Dominion assault pattern from their military manual, page 47. Confirmed. They're following standard doctrine. Recommend response pattern Delta 9 from the Earth Military Academy textbook. Pattern Delta 9 acknowledged. Initiating psychological pressure tactics. Broadcasting captured interrogation files now. Suddenly, the channel filled with recordings of Zephyrian soldiers screaming in panic, begging for mercy, revealing military secrets under human interrogation. The psychological impact on Dominion troops was devastating. They were hearing their own comrades break under pressure. The humans are broadcasting this across all our communication frequencies, Zixara explained. Our soldiers hear it and realize that the humans have detailed files on every Zephyrian they've captured. They know our names, our families, our fears. Vexithara turned off the recording. How do they have such detailed intelligence? Sir, that's the worst part. The humans aren't just fighting us, they're studying us. Every prisoner they take, every battle they fight. Every piece of equipment they capture gets analyzed and added to a database that they share across their entire species. The intelligence chief pulled up another display. We've intercepted human military communications discussing something they call Project Mirror. They're building detailed psychological profiles of every Zephyrian unit, every commander, every individual soldier they encounter. They know more about our military than we do, Zixara added. They've analyzed our tactical manuals, identified our strategic weaknesses, and they're using our own doctrine against us. Vexithara walked to the strategic map showing the current state of the war. Red zones indicated human-controlled space, which had grown significantly despite their smaller military. Yellow areas showed contested systems where neither side held clear control. "What about our technological advantage?" he asked. "Our ships are still superior to theirs." "We're superior, sir," the intelligence chief corrected. "The humans have been reverse engineering our technology and improving it. Their new ships are actually more advanced than ours." The display showed technical specifications for the latest human vessels. Instead of simply copying Zephyrian designs, the humans had analyzed them, identified flaws, and created superior versions. Their ships were faster, more maneuverable, and carried weapons that outperformed Dominion equivalents. "How is that possible? They've only had access to our technology for 6 months." "Sir, human military engineers work differently than ours. Instead of following established procedures, they encourage what they call creative problem solving. They've been redesigning our equipment from scratch, often making it work better than the original." General Zixara pulled up manufacturing reports. "They're also outproducing us. Every human world has converted to wartime production. They're building ships and weapons faster than we can destroy them." Vexithara studied the numbers with growing alarm. The Dominion's industrial capacity was vast, built up over centuries of conquest. But the humans had matched it in months by mobilizing their entire civilization. "Sir," his aide announced, "we have an urgent report from the front lines. Admiral Kexter is requesting immediate evacuation from the Vega system." "Evacuation? That's a core Dominion world." The communication screen showed Admiral Kextar's battered face. Behind him, alarms were blaring and smoke filled the air. "Commander, the humans have broken through our defensive lines. They're not trying to capture our planets. They're systematically destroying our military infrastructure." "Hold your position, Admiral. Reinforcements are coming." "Sir, you don't understand. They're not fighting to control territory. They're fighting to eliminate our ability to make war. They've targeted every shipyard, every weapons factory, every training facility in the system. They're trying to cripple our military capacity permanently." The transmission cut to static as Kextar's ship came under attack. Vexthara stared at the empty screen, finally beginning to understand what they were facing. The humans weren't trying to conquer the Zephyrian Dominion. They were trying to destroy it as a military power. They had turned war itself into a weapon, using the Dominion's own aggressive nature against them. "Sir," his intelligence chief said quietly, "there's one more thing. We've been monitoring human entertainment broadcasts." "Entertainment?" "Yes, sir. They're making movies, writing books, and creating games about the war. But not propaganda pieces. Detailed tactical analyses disguised as entertainment. They're teaching their entire population military strategy through their media." Vexithera sat down heavily. The humans had weaponized everything: their industry, their culture, even their entertainment. They had turned their entire species into a military academy. For the first time in his long career, the High Commander felt something he had never experienced before: the possibility of defeat. The humans hadn't just declared war on the Zephyrian Dominion. They had declared war on the very concept of military superiority through overwhelming force. And they were winning. 1 year after the war began, High Commander Vexithera sat alone in his bunker deep beneath the Zephyrian homeworld. The proud capital city above him lay in ruins, not from human bombardment, but from rioting by the Dominion's own conquered species. The rebellion had started 3 months ago when human broadcasts began teaching insurgency tactics to oppressed populations across the galaxy. His communication system crackled to life with reports from across the Empire. The news was always the same now: defeat, retreat, collapse. "Sir, this is General Molkar from the Rigel sector. Human forces have captured our main shipyard. They're not destroying it. They're converting it to produce their own vessels." "Commander Vexithera, this is Admiral Hickstal. The humans have offered surrender terms to my entire fleet. Half my captains are accepting. Sir, the Altair system has declared independence. They're using human military advisors to train their defense forces." Vexthara turned off the communications. He had heard enough. The Zephyrian Dominion, which had ruled the galaxy for over 1,000 years, was crumbling. And it was all because he had underestimated a species from a small yellow star. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority message. The screen showed Ambassador Elena Vasquez, the same human diplomat who had refused his ultimatum a year ago. She looked older now, with new scars on her face and weariness in her eyes. But her voice was as calm as ever. High Commander Vexithara, this is Ambassador Vasquez speaking for the United Human Government. We're offering you one final chance to end this war. Vexithara almost laughed. You're offering me terms? Your species should be extinct by now. But we're not, she replied simply. Instead, your empire is falling apart. Your military is defeated. Your conquered species are rebelling, and your own people are questioning whether this war was worth fighting. The commander looked at his tactical displays. She was right. The red zones showing Dominion control had shrunk to barely 50 systems. Human-controlled space now covered twice that area, and it was growing every day. What are your terms? He asked. Unconditional surrender. All Zephyrian military forces will lay down their weapons. Your government will be dissolved and replaced with a democratic system. Your conquered species will be granted immediate independence, and you will submit to war crimes tribunals for the atrocities committed during your conquests. And if I refuse? Ambassador Vasquez was quiet for a moment. Then we continue fighting until you're all dead. But we'd prefer not to do that. Vexithara studied the human woman's face. There was no anger there, no hatred, just tired determination. Why, my species attacked yours without provocation. We tried to enslave you. Why offer mercy? Because that's what civilized people do, she replied. We don't fight because we enjoy it. We fight because sometimes it's necessary to protect innocent people from bullies. The word bullies hit Vexithara like a physical blow. That's what the Zephyrian Dominion had become. Galactic bullies who picked on weaker species. And humanity had taught the galaxy how to fight back. You have 24 hours to decide, Ambassador Vasquez continued. After that, we begin the final assault on your homeworld. The transmission ended, leaving Vexithara alone with his thoughts. He accessed the military databases, reviewing the war's progression. What he saw was a masterpiece of strategic planning that had taken his breath away. The humans hadn't just fought the Dominion, they had systematically dismantled it. They had identified every weakness in Zephyrian society and exploited them perfectly. They had turned the Empire's conquered species against their masters, corrupted the loyalty of Dominion troops, and destroyed the very foundations of Zephyrian power. But most impressively, they had done it all while maintaining the moral high ground. Human forces followed strict rules of engagement, treated prisoners well, and provided aid to civilians caught in combat zones. They fought like demons in battle, but acted like saints afterward. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. His aide entered, carrying the latest intelligence reports. Sir, we've received an analysis of human military doctrine from our xenobiologists. They've finally figured out why the humans fight so effectively. Tell me. Sir, it's not that humans are naturally more aggressive than other species. It's that they've turned warfare into an evolutionary advantage. Every human child grows up learning about military history, strategic thinking, and tactical problem solving. The aide handed him a datapad showing human educational systems. They teach something called critical thinking from an early age. They encourage questioning authority, creative problem solving, and adaptive behavior. Every human is essentially trained to be a potential military strategist. Vexithara read through the files with growing amazement. Human children played games that taught them tactical thinking. Their entertainment media was filled with stories about military heroes and strategic victories. Their sports were often based on territorial control and coordinated team movements. They've been preparing for war their entire evolutionary history, the aide continued, not because they're violent, but because they've learned that sometimes good people have to fight to protect others. The commander set down the datapad. What about their technology? Sir, that's the most impressive part. They don't just copy existing designs, they improve everything they touch. They've taken our weapons and made them more efficient. They've studied our ships and built better ones. They've analyzed our tactics and developed countermeasures. But how? Sir, humans have something most species lack. They actively seek out problems to solve. They call it innovation. While other species follow established procedures, humans constantly look for ways to do things better. Vexithara walked to his window, looking out at the ruins of his capital city. In the distance, he could see human ships in orbit, not bombarding the planet, but broadcasting surrender terms and offers of humanitarian aid. Sir, his aide said quietly, there's something else. We've been monitoring human discussions about post-war reconstruction. They're already planning to help rebuild what they've destroyed. What do you mean? They're discussing economic aid packages, educational programs, and technological assistance for former Dominion worlds. They want to help us become better than we were. The commander laughed bitterly. They defeat us, then offer to help us recover? What kind of strategy is that? It's not strategy, sir. It's who they are. The humans fight when they have to, but they prefer to build rather than destroy. They see war as a necessary evil, not a way of life. Vexithara thought about his conversation with Ambassador Vasquez. She had looked tired, not triumphant. The humans had won the greatest military victory in galactic history, but they took no joy in it. A communication alert sounded. The screen showed Admiral Sarah Chen, the same human officer who had sacrificed her ship at Proxima Centauri. Somehow she had survived and been promoted to lead the human fleet. "Hi, Commander," she said formally. "I'm required to inform you that human forces are now in position around your homeworld. We're prepared to begin the final assault, but we're hoping you'll choose surrender instead." "Why?" Vexithara asked. "You've already won. Why give me a choice?" Admiral Chen was quiet for a moment. "Because we're not like you. We don't enjoy causing unnecessary death and suffering. If you surrender now, we can end this without more bloodshed. And if I don't, then we'll do what we have to do. But we'll take no pleasure in it." Vexithara looked at the human admiral's face. There was no cruelty there, no desire for revenge, just sad determination to finish a job that should never have been necessary. "I surrender," he said simply. The relief on Admiral Chen's face was immediate and genuine. "Thank you, Commander. You're making the right choice." Within hours, Zephyrian forces across the galaxy were laying down their weapons. The great dominion that had terrorized the galaxy for a millennium ended not with a final battle, but with a tired old soldier choosing peace over pointless death. As Vexithara was led away to face trial for his crimes, he reflected on the lessons humanity had taught the galaxy. They had shown that true strength came not from the ability to conquer others, but from the wisdom to know when to fight and when to show mercy. The humans had declared themselves the galaxy's protectors, not its rulers. And somehow, that made them more dangerous than any conqueror could ever be. They had become the one thing the galaxy had never seen before: warriors who fought for peace.